share it out to the community, as well as get feedback for anybody who may have not. You all look like regular faces, so I think you've all attended at least one meeting. So I had put up behind this some additional resources that are connected to this presentation. So I'm going to be going in and out of this presentation. But the first thing we're going to talk about this morning is the Title I Committee of Practitioners. So this is a committee I serve on for the Department of Education, and there's a certain amount of seats on this committee. I oversee for Monmouth County, I'm the representative for that. And what we do is we go and we talk about grants, and we talk about what opportunities are out there, how much funding is available. A lot of the times if there's carryover or districts that haven't used money, federal money, they'll do a vote on specifically how to use those additional funds. And this is, people from all over New Jersey that are on this committee, and it's charter schools, public schools, non-public schools, principals, any type of administration, teachers, special ed. It's very well diversified in the members that are part of it. But the goal is to kind of come back and share the information with you, so that way you have an understanding of what goes on at some of those meetings regarding grants and laws that kind of come into place. And one of the things, this was a 3-hour meeting, so I definitely condensed all this information. And a lot of it was, a portion of the meeting was revolving around federal monitoring. And when they go out to districts, and they monitor districts for the ways that they utilize their grant funding and their federal funding. So I kind of left that out because that isn't really applicable to us here. But the first portion I wanted to bring to you, and we've talked about this a little bit before, is the annual school plan and the FY23 ESEA grant. So it is now time that grant will be getting developed by the district. So some of the things, and last meeting we went over, and a lot of you took the survey that we gave out, the needs assessment survey. So this kind of explains the needs assessment process and how it's always a version of an improvement cycle of how we always want to continue to improve our practices and what we're doing. So this is what we're doing. This is what we did with serving. Oh, Chris, can you turn that back? Sorry. Okay, so we identified local needs, and it was interesting to see the results of the survey. A lot of them are, when we looked at the top 2 items that the community selected on each of the grants, Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV, a lot of it's already how we're spending the funding, which was really great confirmation that we're using the funding in a meaningful way. So that helped us identify our needs. We're also looking at research. So when I look at Title III, which benefits our English language learners, I'm talking to the teachers, we're looking at research to see what supplemental research-based interventions can we provide to the students to help support them additionally on top of what they already have, in their classrooms. So that's research. We look at our research, then we plan for implementation. So we came together, we met, we talk about the different needs that the teachers are seeing in the classroom. They developed a wish list specifically to Title III to plan for next year. And then 4 is implementation, which will happen in September. Once the grant is approved, we will move into that implementation stage of utilizing those resources. And we're going to talk today about some of the resources that the teachers have used this year. And then examine and reflect. So we're always reflecting on what we're doing, did it work, did it not work? And so Dr. Kerrigan's going to share some information today on the data that we saw for benchmarks and the growth that we've seen throughout the district in regard to benchmark assessments. So we're always going through this cycle, grant related or not, to make sure that we have meaningful based interventions in place. So again, that committee is a voice. So what they do is they reach out to larger audiences and say, well, what's going on in your school districts? Like right now, we've talked about before, we have annual school plans based out of Ocean Avenue and Bayshore Middle School. So they reach out to the school communities and say, what's working, what's not working, as it's time now to develop those annual school plans for FY23. So some of the things, and I'll be brief because this, this affects Mr. Scarano because he does have an annual school plan for his school. But basically, it's sharing things that the community saw as they complete their annual school plans, things they thought could be really enhanced. It's a very comprehensive document. I know we've looked at it a little bit together before, but you're creating goals for your school, you're creating action steps, you're creating a timeline, you're creating a budget. So it is a very comprehensive, well thought out document. But when they reached out to the community for FY23, they said, okay, for next year, like what should we look at? What are some of the things that might make it easier on school districts? And these are some of the things they came up with. There is a lot going on in your SMART Goals tab where you have to list your action steps. It links to the strategies, and then it links to the budget. So that definitely could be streamlined. Also, sometimes, just like we've probably all been through, it's nicer now, like the automatic save feature, but sometimes in there, if you're not saving your document as you go along, it's easy to lose information. So they're talking about adding just reminders and autosave. And then there's information on, and it's pretty extensive, it asks about the teacher evaluation and qualitative questions regarding that. So it does require reporting during the year from each school district on how many observations have been done, how many evaluations have been done. And then they also talked about adding a spreadsheet, kind of like if you've used Google Forms before, you know how you can take the results and then, convert it into a Google Sheet. Well, they're talking about, adding that feature where there could be a download option where the information in the annual school plan could be converted into a spreadsheet for the budget summary page, which would be very helpful because you have to click on your several different screens when you're trying to create the budget for each of the goals that are in your annual school plan. So again, this is the feedback that they looked at, and these are the recommendations they gave for improvement, moving forward. Okay, so we know part of the PAC is to provide, I've had presenters come in on behalf of the district, provided, electronic resources, handouts. This is just some of the information that was given out at the Title I Committee of Practitioners meeting in regards to parent and family engagement from the USD and the NJDOE. So if I go to that, I'm just going to minimize my screen for a minute. Okay, there's a whole section here, and I thought this would be very helpful in regards to for over the summer, the principals will be sending information out to you. I'm sure you all remember the compact that comes out to you, which is like what each of the stakeholders will do for the next school year. Like what will be the teachers' responsibilities? What will be the students' responsibilities? What will be the administration's responsibilities to help the child be successful throughout the school year? So that's like the Title I compact that you receive, as well as the Title I District School Parent Family Engagement policies. New policies just are being looked at through Strauss S. May, and the district is working on developing those now. They're in draft form. So that is also something that you will talk about, like in the schools will talk about with their ESEA committees for their school. This is our district policy. This is our school level policy. This is our, we develop our compact in a very collaborative manner. So if you ever want to look at anything, this is all the Department of Education, their site for school and family community engagement. And that's linked in the presentation. This is also, again, a large part of our PAC. We have English language learner representatives on our PAC committee. So this is all the resources for family engagement, access testing, professional learning, CLO biliteracy, anything that, resources that you need specific to Title III and bilingual education. That is all housed here on the New Jersey Department of Ed website, and the source is listed down here for you. Okay, I wanted to share this just to give you an update as we wrap up the school year. So the students did an amazing job working through the access testing. Our 4 ESL teachers administered the access test to all our English language learners in the district in April. But I wanted to give you the timeline so you would have it in regards to what's happening next. So during the month of May, I went through the data validation process, which takes, as we register students for access testing, now all the information is in the WIDA system. We convert that to a spreadsheet, and it's all the students' basically demographic information, student ID numbers, all of, if they get modifications, if they're an English language learner, all of that information comes out onto a spreadsheet, and we verify it to make sure it's accurate for the district, so that way when the access score reports come out for parents, all the information's valid and reliable. So anybody that would be waiting for those score reports, they are due to come out on June 22nd to the district, okay? And then it also gets posted in the WIDA AMS, which is the system here. And all the reports come out, if you remember, your parent of an English language learner student, they come out, and then we're able to also share those in the students' native languages as well. We go through like what's available in New Jersey, and there's so many different languages that are available to offer those score reports to make it easy and accessible for parents. And I'm going to show you this site. I have the source listed down there for you.
How many students, about approximately?
We fluctuate a lot. When I first came into the district, we had, I believe it was about 40 something students. We're up to about, I believe, 70, in the 70s now. But it does fluctuate because, like this year, we received newcomer students at our high school level. And then we screen the students when they come into the district, depending on what we find out, like where the student is coming from, and then to see if the student wants to, and the parent wants to receive services. So they get screened by a member of our ESL team that's trained in that, and then what we determine, and we look at their score in the 4 areas that the tests assess, in the 4 domains, and then if they are, eligible, then we let the parent know that, and then we ask them if they would like to receive services. They sign off, and then they're linked with an ESL teacher within the district.
And I don't know where the services are now. They're select schools, so they would potentially have to move schools to
Yes.
get those services.
Absolutely, and we do make that upfront to the parent, as soon as the child comes into the district. And sometimes parents decline, when they first come in, and then the student starts, in the district, they may have a little difficulty, so then they'll reach back out. But yeah, it's up front, we kind of have a conversation about transportation, what schools the services are available, so that way the parents have all that information in the very beginning to make a decision. Okay, so I just put this up because this is an excellent resource too, and you have access to this if you went onto the onto the internet and you put in this URL. And then you would just go here. This is WIDA New Jersey. You would just want to make sure, because every state has different guidelines for WIDA. So you would just want to make sure at the top, you use the drop-down box and choose out New Jersey. Okay? And then here is that timeline that I just showed you for testing. Okay, and Lori Ramella is a huge resource to us. She works for the Department of Education, but she specializes in Title III. Okay, and then there's different, if you go up here, the resource library, there's so many different resources available to parents, to teachers. Okay, all of these are different guides, manuals, okay, parent information, understanding your child's score for access testing. They give a lot of different resources on that.
Do they have those resources in other languages or just?
Some of them they do, yes. Yep, depending on what the resource is. It's a good question. Okay, so if you see up here, they have the Espanol at the top next to the resource library button. So some of it does translate automatically right up there. Thank you, that was a great question. Okay, so this is one of the resources that, I put the URL at the bottom, so if you wanted to go on and read it, but what I like to do is, in working with the ESL team, I always like to provide them as many additional resources as we have. And I always sign up for the WIDA newsletter, which comes out weekly, and they also tend to highlight different resources that come out that are available to parents, teachers. So this was a great resource that came out, embedding the can-do cycle throughout the school year. So I urge you to take a look at it. It's written to the teacher, but it does have some really great questions in there that parents could also talk to their child about. And it focuses on like the can-do cycle. So sometimes when children come in with limited English, we never ever want to focus on what can't be done. So they call it the can-do cycle because we use their strengths to teach. So meaning that, and the article talks a lot about going through the cycle, how teachers can plan before the lesson, during the lesson or during the unit, and after the unit. So it was really important. It revolves around a lot around culturally responsive teaching. So a lot of the times if you talk to an ESL teacher, they'll say, well, we focus a lot on vocabulary. We focus a lot on providing visuals. And they'll provide visuals that are cultural. So if they're explaining different, vocabulary terms, it's easier for the child to understand. So it talks a lot about in the beginning of the cycle for can do. A lot of the times, when we start the beginning of the year, we have an icebreaker where we go around the classroom, the teachers get to know the students get to know the teacher, the students get to know each other. So they use that information and they take anecdotal notes as they go through to prepare their lessons. And I see that a lot in when the ESL teachers submit their lesson plans to me. They really differentiate and personalize per student what strategies are needed in the classroom. And then they talk about what happens during the unit, okay? So they talk about creating this student portrait, and the student portrait gives information on the different modes of communication that they focus on according to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, basic information about the child, their different interests and skills. That's a huge part of it. So whatever they can take in their lesson, just like a lot of the things that I like about the ESL strategies that they use really benefit everyone in the class. Because when you talk about it, well, you're looking at their interests, skills, their abilities, and sharing those with each other, and that's the best way to share this information through the can-do cycle. And then they talk a lot about reflection, and I'm huge on reflection, so I encourage you. They have a whole resource bank in the back of the article, but as I receive these things, if I think they'll be helpful, I'll send them out to the principals and to the teachers, so that way they have additional resources to utilize in the classroom. But the link is down here if you'd like to read the article, and that's the can-do cycle.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
So the classes, let's say at Fairview, these aren't separate classes of English language
No.
learners. It's embedded in the general education or the ICR's classroom setting.
It depends. There is some pull in and push, like pull out,
Right.
depending on what's happening during the lesson. A lot of the times they'll sit and support the child within the classroom. but if it's something they feel like they need additional support with, they may pull them out for like a 10-minute clip, kind of do like a mini lesson to emphasize whatever strategies they feel like that child needs and help that child needs, and then bring them back in and work with the child. So it can be done in a lot of different
And
ways.
if they accept services, we would actually bus them we provide transportation for them to get to the.
When they sign up and they would like services, we'll let them know that services are available with an ESL teacher at Fairview Elementary, at Middletown Village, and then the child ends up attending that school.
And so they could bus their
Yeah.
Saturdays up. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so some end of year celebrations. We all know this has been a really positive but challenging year for everyone. So we just wanted to take some time. We thought this was an excellent opportunity as our last PAC meeting of the school year to kind of just thank all the teachers, all the students for all their hard work and dedication this school year. Okay, and I'm proud to say for the World Language Department, and I know Dr. Cartier has a lot to do with this as well, we all worked as a team. We just want to congratulate our students for the Seal of Biliteracy. We've had students apply for a Seal of Biliteracy before, but this year was the most we ever had. 37 students, some recognized for more than one language, which is huge. And it's such an important piece. Students, just as they plan for their future, no matter what they're doing, that second language is really, really important. So we advocate for our languages, but we just really wanted to recognize them. We had at the last board meeting, not last night, but the prior board meeting, the students were recognized, and the teachers were recognized for all their hard work. And like I said, we had 37 this school year, so if you didn't get a chance to see that on the board meeting, I just wanted to bring that to your attention and congratulate them, because it is a rigorous process. And just to share, within our district, I'm very proud to say that you can apply for the state seal, and you can also apply for the global seal of biliteracy. And as I worked with the global seal personnel, they actually said to me on the phone, like, I want to congratulate the staff, the students, because sometimes school districts stop at the state seal. But they said, Middletown kind of went out of its way, because it is a lot of extra steps, a lot of extra forms that you need to fill out to apply for the global seal. So at the board meeting in April, the students were given their global seal certificates, and then I had inquired with the Department of Education, and the state seal certificates are due to come to us in June. So students will be getting a second certificate because they not only achieved global, they achieved the state seal as well. So kudos to them. Okay, now Dr. Kerrigan is going to share an analysis of the benchmark data presentation. And we wanted to share this because as a wrap up for the year, I know at the beginning of the year we talked a lot about what each of the funds was used for under ESEA. So under Title I, we fund a lot of our salaries for our interventionists, for RDTs and math specialists out of Title I. And then also because we are talking about our English language learner population, Dr. Carey is going to share some of the benchmark data related to that.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to just point out a couple of highlights that our district accomplished this year in terms of our Title I schools and our English language learner population. As you might know, our district uses the Linkit benchmarking system. Students take the Linkit assessments 3 times per year on current grade level standards. So they sit for a Form A assessment early on in the year, like September, October, just to see where they're at on the current grade. So we don't expect them to do too great because they haven't yet been explicitly taught all of those concepts. However, our students often show that they do know some things already from the grade before, or they're home, or they're just really great problem solvers and readers. So we do get some pretty decent scores on Form A. And then we chart their growth all year long as they take Form B in the winter and Form C in the spring. Our interventionist team and our teachers use this data to personalize instruction and work with students where they're at. We meet as a district 3 times a year in this room with the specialists, with the interventionists, with the administrators, to look at our district's performance level and revise our pacing and planning guides, develop plans, etc. We're actually meeting next Thursday to look at Form C results and then reflect on the year, how the NJSLA exams went, how our students did on C, and then we make recommendations for the following year. So it's always this constant cycle of assessment and revision and reflection. In our Title I schools, we have dedicated specialists. So in each of the elementary schools that are classified as Title I, we have a full-time math interventionist and a full-time reading development teacher. And these people work with students and teachers alike to make sure that the students are learning as much as they possibly can. In the middle school, in Thornton and Bayshore, we have 2 full-time math interventionists, and then we also have literacy interventionists and coaches as well. So there's all hands on deck in those places to make sure that the students who need help are getting it. Whoops. Okay. So I wanted to report out on Form A to C growth over the whole year. Our Form C window closes on Friday, so not every school has sat for Form C just yet, and even the ones who did sit, not every student in the grade might have sat, but I wanted to just give you a snapshot of, as of yesterday afternoon at the end of the school day, with a couple days left, how our students are doing. So I just listed out the Title I schools along with the linked assessments A and C, and we've been seeing considerable growth from those forms in many of the schools in grade levels. If you see NA right now, that just means that that grade hasn't sat for the linked test yet. They'll be doing it today, tomorrow, or Friday. But we've seen some pretty tremendous growth. I mean, Ocean Ave, 45% increase in grade 4 math. Bayshore, 58% increase in 8th grade math. And a lot of that is our interventionists trying new things and working with different types of pre-assessments and spiraling and trying some different things out in the classrooms and also in the small group setting. So we're really proud of our teachers, our interventionists, and our students for really having a growth mindset and experiencing growth over the course of the year. For our English language learners, I wanted to highlight some growth from Form A to B, our September administration to our early winter administration. Since there's so few of these students, the Form C results right now, that there weren't really many to grab since they're not done yet. So I thought maybe an A to B showing would be better since all the students sat for those at this point in time. And even for those learners in elementary school, we're seeing great strides in math. 19% growth just in a couple months in 2nd grade. Double digits also for grade 4. And then ELA as well. These assessments are about reading and themes and all sorts of higher level literacy skills, and our English language learners are doing really well as well from Form A to B. And again, B is only mid-year, so if they're reaching 47% mastery in grade 5 mid-year, that's pretty good. That's half the year. So they're right on target with what we would expect. And we're really happy with the way that everybody's been working this year and how the students have been performing. So we'll be getting the Form C data, and hopefully at a Board of Ed meeting at some point coming up, we'll report out on district level results once we have all the C data in, and a look at A to C for the whole district, and then even just A, B, and C, and how those line up with NJSLA scores as well. All right, I think that's it for me.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, so the last part of the presentation is I always like to get the teacher feedback involved. So I asked our ESL teachers to kind of just share some highlights for the year and celebrations that they had. This year we've been using Imagine Learning specific to our ELL population, and Ms. Sue Meehan, who's at Milltown Village, just talked about how proud she was of the students and the growth that she's been able to see this year. And it really does provide some amazing data reports. So you can see that she's noted that there's been 94% progress. And she's able to utilize this data to support her instruction as she moves forward throughout the year. Okay, and then you'll see the students are really happy. We talked about, making that cultural connection for our English language learners. So you'll see a couple pictures in here. where we used our Title III funds to purchase those ELL like leveled libraries for our students. So they were super excited to have the amount of choices that they have. Thanks. And then Miss Maura Murphy is at Leonardo, and she also goes to Middletown Village in the afternoon to support some of our students. So she talked about how we looked at the WIDA site before. There's speaking and writing activities, and also these are the rubrics corresponding on the bottom that she utilizes to assess students' speaking and writing skills throughout the year. So as you can see in green, it shows the pre-assessment to the post-assessment for speaking, and then also for writing. And she gave just a glimpse of some of our students and the growth that they have made, the students that she's been working with. And they're really comprehensive but great rubrics to help her guide in her instruction as well. So that's another piece of how they guide their instruction. And then Ms. Maura Murphy also focused on her ELL leveled library. I asked them to kind of talk to the students about, you know, in the different ways that we use the funds, what did they find to be the most exciting and most helpful and most meaningful. So a lot of them definitely pointed out the leveled libraries. And a lot of that is so that they're reading books on their level, so they're not getting frustrated as they, you know, move through the school year. And like John said, we are seeing that growth. Okay, and this is Miss Mercedes Laprana. She teaches at Fairview for ESL, and she also is at Bayshore for Spanish. So she has been focusing a lot on the students' writing, and she said she has seen tremendous growth throughout the year. So again, relating it to things that the students can connect with, you know, going to McDonald's, who doesn't connect to that, right? She shared their writing sample as a success story for her classes. Okay, and again, they were really amazed at all the different choices that came with the ELL leveled libraries. The students were super excited about it. Okay, and then this is Miss Nicole Kagan. She is half-time at Bayshore and half-time at Middletown North. And this was a suggestion from her. The National Geographic, great writing. So she could bring some of like the, like, you know, make it very interdisciplinary for them and help them work on their writing skills. And she said this has been really great for all of her newcomers this school year. So she's been using it to help them improve their writing skills, and that's them working on one of their assignments. And then another item focused and funded through Title III is the Vocabulary for Success through Savlier, and she's been able to use that with her English language learners to work on their academic language, and that they can use throughout, you know, all classes. Can I take any questions? Okay, thank you so much and have an amazing summer.
Just, Mrs. Alphone, were you here at our last picture? No, okay. So I want to introduce Mrs. Alphone because she is the newest assistant superintendent we have here in the district. And although I say she's new, she's not. She's not old, she's young, but, but she was here for many years. She was principal at River Plaza. She was a director in the curriculum department for many, many years, and left to be superintendent at Monmouth Beach. She's been there for 2 years and decided she really missed us, and she's going to come back. She has a great amount of skill. She has knowledge of curriculum, you know, very deep knowledge of curriculum. And I think her experience as superintendent really has, you know, enhanced what she can offer our district at the cabinet level. So she was just the perfect person to go back. She knows our district, so she has just hit the, actually she hit the ground running before she was even officially here. She'd be coming to our meetings and answering emails and, you know, helping us out. But, so this is your third week, right? Beginning of your fourth. Time flies. All right. So, let me start about the restructuring. y'all know Mrs. Pecos, right? She left, and it was a time for us, actually before she left, before she retired, who I talked to yesterday, and she's just having a blast. She's down in Florida decorating her house. And at any rate, it was an opportunity for us to really look at our structure and see where we needed the most supports and how our team fit into making those supports actually, work best for the district and for our students. So one of the first things we decided to do was to combine the curriculum and the special ed area. As you know, Mrs. Pecos was in charge of curriculum and HR, but moving into our initiatives, especially our special ed initiative for inclusion, we really thought that that melding of curriculum and special ed was really important. I'm sorry, curriculum and special ed. With the initiative for inclusion, it's really important that our, not only special ed teachers have the skills to work with our special needs students, but also our gen ed teachers have those skills. And right now, a lot of those teachers aren't confident in those skills to work with students with special needs, especially the ones with more needs that would have been years ago placed in a self-contained class with a special ed teacher who has been trained in those skills. So having the curriculum department who oversees teacher training and making sure teachers have the skills and knowledge and resources to deal and help every student in the district grow and learn, that was to us a good way to help make sure that happens, that those two departments work really closely together. So that is what Mrs. Alphone is going to oversee. Now we have the HR department who no longer is connected to curriculum. So we have to say, who's going to oversee HR? Mr. Ranella, he's not here right now. Mr. Ranella is the person that we chose because he has a lot of experience with HR. He's been a principal for many years, and he's been a cabinet level person for many years. And that level, we kind of talk about HR a lot. You get a really good understanding of the laws, of what we can do, bargaining units, that type of thing. So he's been very involved in it. So he's taking over the HR department. He's also going to oversee the daily operations of the facilities department, which is a lot of that is HR. It's a lot of dealing with bargaining units and employees. And he's also going to retain his oversight of our athletic programs. It's something that he is really vested in. He's a member of the NJSIAA New Jersey Committee, so he's going to continue with that. Mr. Kirkpatrick is going to, he has been Mr. Kirkpatrick has been a principal at every single level over the last 12 years, 16 years, or whatever. I'm making you younger than you are. And then he came up here to work in the student support services, or sometimes we like to call it operational area. So he has been promoted from a district director to assistant superintendent to oversee the entire student services department. And he has a great background in mental health, like psychology, mental health, student well-being, which is really a focus right now for the district. It's more important than ever because of what students have been through the last few years. It's more important than ever because of the violence you see in schools. I mean, it oftentimes starts with mental illness, and so these are areas that we really have been and continue to place a lot of resources and focus on. So, I think Mr. Kirkpatrick is the perfect person for that position. So, that is our restructure. We're still looking at, we have one more position that we added. It's a director position, and it's a director in the special ed department. It's Mr. Dorgan. He will start July 1st. Mr. Dorgan currently is an assistant principal at High School South, and he oversees the special class programs at the high school level at High School South. He's going to be coming into the district level position, and he will oversee secondary special ed programs. He'll also be the HIB coordinator, and Mrs. Schreck, who's currently overseeing as a director, the pre-K to 12 special ed, she will just be pre-K, she'll be elementary, pre-K and elementary. And of course you have Dr. Tiedemann, who's a district director over all that. In our our HR, we also have a district director, Mrs. O'Hagan, and then we have our 2 district directors in curriculum, Dr. Kerrigan and Mrs. Burke. So, forgot her name. And so that's our structure right now. So, you know, we're continuing to look at that. We, you know, have the cabinet, we call it the cabinet level, which is the assistant superintendents and the VA, Mrs. Doherty. But we continue to look at everything underneath to make sure that they're all supporting our priorities and initiatives to ensure that they all get done also.
How do the principals report through this structure?
Well, it depends. Principals mainly are Mr. Kirkpatrick in the operational student, you know, support services. That is their main report. But if there's a curricular area or a special ed area, they would go through, you know, Mrs. Alphone. If it's something with HR, you know, issues with personnel, they would go through Mr. Ranella. But direct responsibility is Mr. Kirkpatrick.
And just because we ran into this and it's changed a few times, the assistant principals at the high schools, they don't have any curricular responsibility?
Yes, they do.
Oh, they do?
They do, yeah.
Okay,
They have
so I know they have.
They might have, well, they'll do evaluations, you know, that type of thing. But we do have our director level in the curriculum department.
Right.
So you have directors of each curricular
right.
area. So that would be, you know, where the, I don't know what to call it, oversight, but it's more like resource and guidance would come from. The principal and the APs are really more responsible for the staff in their building.
Yeah, because when you look at, let's say, the SUP, like somebody said, who do I talk to if I have a problem with, I'm just gonna make this up, you know, a subject area. And you go on the site, and the assistant principals, their only responsibilities
Okay, but
listed
just-
are grade level,
Yeah,
like almost
But
like that.
but the whole, if you look at the chain of command, your first person to go to would be a building administrator. You wouldn't go to a district administrator first. So you would start with an AP. If they couldn't help you, you know, or you could start with the principal, one or the other. If they couldn't help you, then they would say, okay, I you know, this is who you can call next, and they would give you the name of whatever. If it, you know, if it was, you know, health or phys ed, you would go to Mrs. Roscoe.
Yeah, and 3-4 years ago, like, I knew exactly which APs had which area. I don't think people know that anymore.
Well, because they don't necessarily, I would call the principal, honestly. If I had an issue with a curricular item, I would pick up the phone and I would call the principal. And they could either, you know, help you or, because sometimes it's really not even the curricular area. It looks like it is, but it's more, it might be the personnel area or it might be student services area. You know, it depends. So start at the building level. They're usually the best ones to answer your questions. And they have a lot of knowledge too, even though they don't have specific curricular areas that they're responsible for. They know it's being taught in their buildings.
And then just, I'd like to thank everybody for changing that reporting on special ed. I always kind of broke my heart to have them reporting through facilities versus, you know, where do we put them versus how do we educate them. So I feel like this is this really mirrors what the district is saying in their strategic planning. I really appreciate that change in reporting.
Great. Okay. All right. Thanks.
So do we have to get them?
Looks like you're looking for more? Yeah.
Good morning. So yeah, if you have health and phys ed questions, I'm a person. But with that said, I have met with all of the building administrators at least once, if not a few times, about what's in that curriculum so that they can help you understand what's going on and what's being done in the various buildings. You know, obviously we have a whole lot of teachers who are teaching this. We felt that it was really important for the building administrators to know just as much as I do about what's going on in those classrooms. So your health update is that you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, right? And if you've not been paying attention to some of the board meetings where it was addressed, we rewrote our health and phys ed curriculum over a year ago, and it's been implemented all year. So we did it in a Middletown way that is aligned to the New Jersey standards, but we did it in a way that we knew would work in our community, and I think that it has. So, we have already been teaching those new standards. We have already been doing some things that are new and different, and many of them are the things that we've always done. You're still going to get a very similar letter if you have a 4th or 5th grade student about their puberty lessons, if you've not already seen that. Some of the things they're just, the way that we've always done them. But there are some new topics in there. So we are doing it in ways that I believe are very sensitive to the community in which we live, and that's what's going on. But we had to hire a whole lot more, going back a couple years, we had to hire a whole lot more elementary health and phys ed teachers for the amount of time that we have them in health and phys ed. So with our new staff and now our new curriculum, we felt like it's really time to get a new resource. So that's the change that we are making for the health classes for next year at the elementary level. Last year when we were writing the curriculum, there wasn't really much out yet because no one else was doing it, and the textbook companies hadn't really caught up. So we have found a resource that we're pretty happy with, and that we are going to put forward to the board to adopt. And with that, we will update our curriculum guides so that the teachers have access to one direct resource that they can rely on for a lot of what they would use in classes with their students at the elementary level. The secondary level, we already did that. We already found a couple books that we really like and that are again in line with our curriculum and what we were planning to teach. So grades 6 through 12, status quo. I've been getting teacher feedback on that curriculum informally all year, but at the end of May, we always collect that feedback formally from teachers about how it's been going. And the biggest feedback that I've gotten so far is that the junior year health curriculum just has too much stuff in it. So, we're looking at that to see what we can parse apart, but otherwise, everything has been received well, at least at the teacher's end. And from all the parents who I've talked to, those have been, answered and worked through. Those questions are usually misunderstandings and not major issues. But the elementary, we are going to edit our curriculum guides a little bit so that we can update that resource and then be, really intentional about what things we're using with our students. So with that rewrite, and it's not a true rewrite, right, but like with those few revisions and with the introduction of a new resource, we're going to hold a couple of parent forums in August is our plan, but we don't have dates yet. So bear with us as we start to plan those. It could be August or even into September, but we don't want to piggyback on back to school nights. To address very specifically, what are we doing not only in health classes, but we really are going to talk about, how are we teaching many of the different things that are out there and that you've been seeing in statutes and mandates, and that we're doing in our classrooms in very different ways. So health will be one of those focus areas, but it actually won't be the whole focus area. We're going to try to do kind of like here's how we do curriculum in Middletown on a couple nights. Like I said, I think we said August last time. I don't know if you've
We're shooting for August.
We're shooting for August.
And we will record them in case people can't attend personally. They'll be accessible online.
For sure.
This is for elementary or for all levels?
The health portion will probably focus on elementary, but the rest of it will be, really how are we doing this at all levels.
It's things that are in state law. There are so many mandates at this point that are prevalent in the news that you see often. So we felt it was really important to give the community an inside look into what these laws require us, and then directly, how do we cover them, as Devin said, in a sensitive way to our community's needs. But to me, it's better for us to give you that information so that you have the correct information to filter some of these things that you're seeing out there in the world.
Can you tell us the name of the new resource that you're going to be using at the elementary?
We're going to adopt it probably next month, so once, we just want to make sure
So
that.
it'll be more vetted.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yep, and it's a vetted source. The best part, and I'll give some generics, we liked it for a couple of reasons. It's very aesthetically, developmentally appropriate for elementary age students. It is, if any of your students are familiar with Scholastic magazines, it's pamphlet driven. Which gives us the ability to not adopt a textbook that we're locked into forever in time. Consumables like that tend to morph with changes, which is a good thing. The other piece of it two pieces we felt were really important is that there is an online capacity where parents can access the actual pamphlets virtually to see the content without. I have kids, they don't bring anything home even if you ask them to, and then if they bring it home, something happens between the bus and the door that I'm not really sure about. So we felt like the virtual piece was important for parents to have eyes on the content as the content is written. The other portion, which was really important to us, is that the company actually does what we refer to as a crosswalk. They take our New Jersey standards and they show us exactly where in their materials the standard is covered. So if you have a standard that you're concerned about, or there's something that you specifically want to know how it's addressed in the content, it will point you right to it in the materials. So we felt that it gave us the ability to have a developmentally appropriate resource that was also vetted through our standards lens, and kept us in compliance, but also met the needs of our community. So this resource, we feel, does that the best.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Roscoe? Okay.
Quick question. So in the past, you were able to opt in, well, you were able to opt out if you didn't want your child to participate in health. Because of this crosswalk, would parents have the ability to have their child participate in health, but take one standard and say, I'm not comfortable with this particular standard, and then the teacher will be able to see where it's being taught and that child not attend for that?
Right, so we're looking at the reverse of that, an opt-in actually,
Oh, okay.
where parents give permission for students to participate in certain areas. And because it's very, almost like modules, like there are overarching topics, and I believe there are 10 pamphlets, Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, so that equates to like 10 units. So we would probably ask parents to look at opting into full units.
Okay.
Just for consistency, but remember, those concepts are bundled together. So you're gonna
Right.
see, there's gonna be some very generic things, as Mrs. Orozco said, that we've always done forever in time. And there's going to be those units that contain more sensitive topics where parents may choose not to opt in.
Okay, great, thank you.
But it's always been unit or lesson driven that you opt out of health. It's not that you're opting out of the whole,
Right.
all of health, right? You always do it by topic or by unit. So that'll be maintained. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, and Matt, Mr. Director,
Yes, ma'am.
can Mr. already go, because she's been working on something and.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Ms.
Everybody wants to hear about lunch.
We all want to hear about Whitson's.
Hello, everybody. I'm Amy Doherty. I'm the business administrator. For those of you who don't know me, I know many of you do. I guess one of the topics today, just looking for an update on Whitson's. I don't know if there's any specific questions. I mean, I can tell you overall what's going on. I mean, as you've probably seen, we've been trying to get more and more back to service pre-pandemic and doing things. Actually, there's something going on. There's a guest chef event going on today at High School North. I think it's Nolan's Cafe is there. So that's exciting, and doing some of these special event type things that we haven't been able to do in a while. I know that one of the questions I think that was specific was, are we going to have to pay for lunch next year? And as far as we know, yes. That program has not been extended for next year, the free lunch for everybody. So we will be going back to regular free and reduced eligibility and paid lunches. So I don't know if that hopefully that answers the question. If something comes out over the summer, we of course will let everybody know, but as of right now, we're told that it's going to be back to paid lunches for next year. I know that just like everywhere, we've been focusing on staffing too for the lunchrooms, and it's or for the kitchens, and it's getting better. It's just they're facing the same challenges that the rest of us are in all of our different lines of work and businesses. But they are focusing on that and hoping to get everything back to a pre-pandemic experience. We did discuss at the board meeting last night. I mean, they are renewed for next year, Whitson's, but the way the food service provider contract cycles work, you can renew them for up to 4 years. You get a base year, renew up to 4 years. So next year will be the last eligible renewal under their current contract. So we will be going out for competitive proposals next year because we have to. We're not allowed to renew this contract after next year. So I'm sure you'll hear about that process as it evolves over the next year, and we'll keep everybody posted. But it's, as far as we're concerned, we're all systems go. So.
Quick question, with the free lunches that these last 2 years, is that, in the past, there's a certain amount of money that the school has gotten to maintain and a fund to use to upgrade it or whatever you need to do for the kitchen
fund is like what Mrs. Piasecki is saying, we can put aside and use for future projects. So we have been able to accumulate some funds for that. We do have to think about, long-term, what we're going to be doing with that. We haven't done, to your point, really much of any projects in food service over the past couple of years. It's been sort of in limbo, not knowing exactly where we were going with this. But yes, and we've used some of that money for equipment. We've upgraded some of the kitchen equipment, refrigerators and ovens and things like that. Haven't done anything as far as construction on kitchens go for a while, so it's something that we will have to get back to evaluating and see how we're going forward. That will also be part of the planning for the new contract that we get, because when a food service management company comes in, a lot of times they'll propose to make an investment in the district of a certain amount of funds to help us with improvements, so that'll be all part of that process as well.
Will the menu be more varied than now that it's not free anymore? Because there used to be quite a lot of selections on the menu, but it seemed like that kind of minimalized with the fact that it was free. So I'm just wondering if the menus will start to open up a little bit more.
They are continuing to working toward expanding the menus. I know that they run into not only challenges for labor, but also, in some of the, just getting some of the food too. Just like when we go to the food store, we can't get certain things. But no, I mean, to your point, yes, they definitely want to do that. And I'm sure they're going to want to do that even more as we're entering a competitive process for, either they would win that process again or somebody else will win it again. But I'm not saying that there's excuses for anybody, but it's just a reality, but no, that definitely is the intention. And I think they have been able to do that to some extent this year too. So.
I just wanted to say something positive about Whitson. My daughter has celiac, so they give her every month. Miss Ritz emails her a gluten-free menu, and she can choose what day she wants to have lunch there. And there's an email with the school's cafeteria workers, and they provide her a gluten-free lunch, and she goes and picks it up every day. So that gave her the opportunity to be able to eat school lunch, and I'm just really grateful. So she's always, helped me out with that. So that's something available.
Good to hear. I mean,
Gluten allergy.
That's good. I think, we also, as everybody gets back into even the more normal method of paying for their lunch, we probably want to push out some more information over the summer of things like that are available, and people will refresh their memories or learn for the first time, because we've had a lot of parents come into the district that weren't even here before the pandemic, so they're not even used to the whole going through the line and the lunch accounts and all that stuff. So
Yeah, the lunch account.
yeah. So Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, totally kind of tangential but not really related. It must be very hard to predict the demand every day, given that it's been free. Like, I know some days my daughter decides, yeah, today I'll just do the free lunch, tomorrow I won't. Like, it's very varied, and I have to imagine that's hard for them to predict. And I'm wondering, how much extra food do they have every day, and what do they do with it? And is that in any way the district's business or prerogative, or does Whitson's kind of totally handle that on their own?
Well, that is really falling under Whitson's umbrella. The way our contract is structured, we pay a fixed price per meal served. So, if they manage their production. But to your point, if there's anything that's able to be retained and used, if it's a packaged good or something like that, obviously that can be stored and reused again. If it's prepared food, you really can't do anything with that. We've had those discussions before. People have asked, well, why can't we pick that up and take it to a food bank or something? You're not allowed, Board of Health won't even let you do that. But they have been managing that, and they have gotten sort of the trends on the demand over the past year, as far as who's going to be looking for what, and they try to manage that the best as they can. It's not a perfect science, but they do pretty well. We don't have a whole lot of extra. It would be on them if we did anyway, but not that we want to see wasted food. But
Okay, thank you.
so yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Mrs. Doherty before we wrap up? Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Well, it was nice to see everybody. Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Take care.
We'll be busy.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you? Hope that you're well. If your children are anything like mine, they're done. They're ready to be finished. I have a senior, and I don't think he's been in school. They have so many events. We live in Shrewsbury, so he goes to Red Bank Regional, but busy time of year for all the students. I think what we need to acknowledge, and I think we've done a good job as a district, is what the children have been through over the last 2.5, whatever years. We're adults. We have coping mechanisms. We have a toolbox that we go to when we need to get through difficult times. Our children's brains aren't developed yet. They are still dealing with emotions. They're still growing into young adults and to older children in some cases. And I think that what we've begun to do is really pay the necessary attention and the appropriate attention to mental health. So that's a little bit about what Mrs. Walker was discussing before. I also need to say that in my new position, I am in charge of security. We understand how important that is. I was just telling someone the other day, when I was a principal, the first thing I would always say at back to school night, whether it was an elementary position or when I was at the high school, was that, you know, taking the children from parents it's a humbling experience, and it really, that's the thing you worry about every day as a principal, is the safety of the students, and that never changes, and especially when you're a parent yourself. So I need you to know that not only the mental health piece is a focus right now, but the security is. We're very, very fortunate to have a relationship with the Middletown Police Department and have John McGuire on staff, who is a phenomenal resource and just a wonderful, wonderful employee to have working with you. So I need you to know that we're focusing on security. And if you have questions outside of this forum that you want to discuss security-wise, you can certainly reach out to me and we can discuss it further. The last time I was here, I think in depth, I spoke about our resources and some of the programs we had. I'm sorry if I repeat that, but I understand that there were some people who are new and you wanted me to recap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak briefly about Effective School Solutions, because we've had a relationship with them for several years now. Before this year, we had I'm going to talk a little bit about Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. Just so you're aware, Tier 3 support, which I'm initially going to discuss, is support for more significant mental health needs. All right, when I talk about Tier 2 support, it is more mild to moderate need. So prior to this year, we just had Tier 3 support. At High School North, we had 3 programs, which we still have. The Bridges program, which is a self-contained program. The Dual Diagnosis program, which is you have to have a mental health diagnosis and an autism diagnosis. And that is a mainstream program. It's a wraparound program, which means you get individual therapy, you can have group therapy, you can have parent therapy, and counseling. So when you hear wraparound, that's really what it means. It's a variety of supports. And we also had at High School North a traditional Tier 3 support where the children were mainstreamed, and all of the children who received Tier 3 services have to have an IEP. All right, so there was 3. There was Bridges, Dual Diagnosis, and regular Tier 3, which were students that were mainstreamed with an IEP. And they would receive counseling throughout the day, wraparound. At the middle schools, there's 1 Tier 3 wraparound program. That was last year. It was at Thorne. And if you had students that had an IEP and had significant mental health needs, they would go to Thorne, whether you were a Thompson student or Bayshore, and you could be a part of that program at Thorne. And we didn't have anything at the elementary schools at the time. So we've made significant growth over this year. We're fully staffed with Effective School Solutions. We have Tier 2 counseling right now. We've added, at the high school, 1 counselor between the 2 buildings. They go back and forth. We have 1 at the middle school that is shared between the 3 middle schools. Again, this is for Tier 2, mild to moderate need, do not need an IEP. And at the elementary school, we've hired 3 Tier 2 counselors that rotate between pods of the 11 schools. So we've added significant services with our counseling. We have also added Tier 1, which is professional development. We've provided tremendous professional development for our staff, and we've had parent workshops, which are going to continue to build on. I do need to say, just to talk about the PD real quickly, I wanted to discuss, we've done so much training this year with our counseling staff. Number 1, they're the frontline workers, but realistically, they're also a little bit easier to train during the course of the day, right? Our staff, some of our other staff are tied up teaching and other responsibilities, but we're dedicating a whole day during our professional development days in the summertime just for our teaching and other staff. It's going to be a PD day just on mental health and social emotional learning. So that's something we're really excited about.
And I'm sorry, was that all staff? Or?
Yeah, it's all staff, and listen, realistically also, there's going to be some staff that have responsibilities on that day that may not be able to attend, but we plan on videotaping so we can show those staff. But the intent is to hit as many of our staff members. That's one of the concerns we have from our counselors, is that, You know, they're so trained and they can only turn keys so much, but the teachers aren't always on the same page. So getting everybody on the same page and consistent is going to be important. So that training, that first week of school, we're looking forward to that. Yeah, Rachel.
Does that also include any coaches who may or may not be, you know, daytime staff of the district?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you mean like academic coaching or?
No, I meant like sports coaching. I just feel like a lot of times, and I know Denise, who's not here today, has brought this up in the past, that's kind of an outlet or a point of visibility between a district staff member and a child where you get to see a kid in a very unique way that may be a good place to identify potential issues or notice when kids are struggling, et cetera. So I think it's just as important that the extracurriculars, the staff that's overseeing the extracurriculars have visibility into that as well and get trained.
And to your point, not going to be an issue for people who are already in district.
Yeah.
It's the people who are out of district that we can offer them that training to attend. They may have other jobs and other obligations, but like I said, what we can do is tape it. We also have a series of trainings that all staff members are mandated to take in the beginning of the year. They'll be exposed to that and required to take that. And then I do a training, a HIB-related training and a child abuse training on all coaches separately. But that's something that will be offered, and they'll be offered the opportunity to watch the videotape also, because you can't guarantee all of them are going to be available those
Okay, so
days.
it's not like they don't have to, like, when we had to do the, like, I watched the video, I signed this release.
There's mandated trainings that they have to have,
Okay.
but that first PE day, we really haven't decided whether that was going to be. But they have a list of mandated trainings if you work in the district that you have to participate in.
Yes.
Whether it's bloodborne pathogens and bullying and suicide prevention, those are trainings that we have that all of our employees have to watch, like the first 30 days of school, and then they have to sign off on it by September 30th and send it up to central office.
But not a coach, that's not, only when they work in the district.
Coaches as well.
Okay.
Coaches work in the district, they're employees though.
Yep, they're required, anyone who, our custodians have to go through those trainings, our security guards have to go through those trainings. They're required trainings. Substitute teachers have to. So my secretary, as people get added, obviously staff are fluid all year, as they get added, Mrs. Drobesh's responsibility is to reach out to them, give them the information so they can log on and watch those trainings. So we'll hit as many of the staff members as we can. Yeah.
What about volunteers that come into the school, PTA, chair people of things?
So parent volunteers traditionally do not have to watch the vector solution trainings. I can't think of any mandated trainings that we have. We don't even really do fingerprinting for parent volunteers.
I remember having to take an online thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was the HIB training.
The HIB training.
You know, in the past, if they were regular, remember when we had like library parents who could be in the building like 2 times a week?
Those are the ones we get
Those
training.
are the ones that are required to do it. You don't do that anymore. It's more irregular people. It's not like
Class party, you're
regular
not going to be required to do it.
assignment. Yeah.
Field day, you're not going to be required to do
Yeah.
it. But if you're somebody who's in the building on a regular basis, those are the individuals.
Working with students, yes.
And John McGuire gives presentations.
He
like
does.
For grannies, we had to.
He does.
Everybody had to come in.
And John and I do presentations for the YMCA, and we do presentations for ESS as well. We're trying to expand our training as much as possible. I was talking about what we've added this year. So we talked about all those Tier 2 counselors. Those Tier 2 counselors are also responsible to do our fit to returns. So we do threat assessment clearances on students. In the past, we had to send those students out, and we would do the threat assessment in the school. We would call a parent would come pick them up. They would be responsible to taking them to a medical provider to get a clearance. Now we can use those ESS counselors to come in to the buildings, whether, you know, if they're in another building, we can call them in to do the clearance. What we have discovered though, instead of doing the clearance the day of, it's been more effective to do it the next morning. I do know it's an inconvenience for parents, but we have found that students are not yet in the right mind frame to be cleared immediately after an incident, so we're doing it the next morning. But it is a convenience that the parent can bring the child in that next morning, we meet immediately, they can stay for the day, and it does minimize the disruption a little bit. So the fit to return has been successful. We are also working on a universal screener. We've had several meetings with ESS to put a universal screener in place. What a universal screener does is get a baseline of students' mental health and social emotional well-being, and we can kind of determine who might need extra assistance. Now, I know there's some concern in the community of what that looks like and what their role is going to be, whether they can opt in or opt out. We are also looking for an opt-in process that we're going to pilot in one school initially. It'll probably start in one of the high schools. Parents are not going to necessarily be able to see the tool that we use, because you answer one question and it might take a student out to another area and another question. But we're going to be as transparent as possible with the process. Parents will not have their children screened unless they want to do so. and we're hoping to have that in place October-ish. But we've met every 2 weeks to kind of get this ball rolling. That's where we are with the Fit to Return. I did want to add the fact that for the first time, we're going to have a counseling committee next week. We have invited, it was voluntary, Dr. Young and I. Dr. Young is currently the equity and inclusion specialist in the district. She's one of the few people in the district who can provide clinical supervision, and she has been in this district as a counselor for many years, I think close to 20 years now, and she's phenomenal. Her and I are going to be running a counseling committee where we get some feedback from our counselors, kind of come up with a direction, where we're going, where we would like to go, what we think needs to be added, what sort of supports are needed, any concerns that they have. We're going to meet for the first time next week, and then moving forward after that, we're going to meet regularly throughout next school year. So I'm excited about that. We are also in the process of adopting a social emotional learning curriculum. So our counselors we've implemented programs like Choose to Be Nice and different programs through the years in our buildings. And the counselors have always done push-in presentations for classrooms, but we have identified, and I know the counselors have wanted this for years now, we've identified the need for a real curriculum for them to follow. So we've posted for a curriculum committee, which we plan on meeting before the end of the school year to get the ball rolling and have something in place by September. Ms. Alfone, who is obviously in charge of curriculum, is going to be playing a vital role with her experience. And like I said, Dr. Young and myself are going to be working with the counselors to make sure we put something in place that they can use that's effective, number one, that's supported with data, number two. And listen, we want to support them too. Having someone get up in front of the class and maybe make a statement that's not supported in data, or they haven't been trained, or it's not aligned with the curriculum, we don't want to put them in that position. So it's effective for us in a lot of different areas. We're excited about getting a social emotional learning curriculum. Any questions for me? Vera?
Two things. When you said what we had in place, I thought High School South had a program before this.
They used to have
ESS.
for ESS. Did I not mention it?
No.
Okay, so ESS has so North has the 3,
Right.
South has a matching one that's a
Tier 3?
It's a tier 3. It's a mainstream
Okay.
program. So they have an IEP, but they're mainstreamed into the curriculum, and they receive wraparound services too here. So they
Okay.
get individual counseling. They do group during the day, and the parents have counseling with the students also.
Right. And you mentioned the counseling committee, and I know there's also a broader mental health.
Mental Health Association. Well,
Committee.
Correct. They meet quarterly.
We had, I know in other things, we had talked about, and I know privacy is an issue and those sorts of things, but how do you get student or parent input, more importantly, student input? I just feel like it's so important, and I love the PD idea because at least, I listen to my son and his friends, and, if they're having a bad day, they don't necessarily go to the person that's assigned to them in their high school, because that person might also do drug testing, might also do other things that, so they go, Mr. Lightbody, the nicest, a teacher that will listen. And
Trusted.
so I think that's just, so the PD, so that everybody is covered, I think it's a wonderful thing, because we have those teachers that kids are comfortable going to and sitting with if they're having a bad day, or they just, want to hang out. But how do we get kind of the kid, the student input?
Well, I think that's a good idea. So Mrs. Walker has student forums at the high schools. I think that's something we can consider having, an adult.
Also meet with the students
Yes.
and the counselors, and they bring their, the counselors and even the teachers bring forward what the students are saying. It's
I don't think a periodic meeting with counselors, a voluntary meeting for students to come into the media center to have discussions and
Yeah.
concerns is a bad idea. I don't know if I support it necessarily at the elementary school. I'd have to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
But I think at the secondary schools, it would give an outlet for students to talk to someone.
I think it's just, we're in like a very unique time. I mean, my daughter has now been gone 3 years, and the mental health issue just 3 years ago for them was very taboo. I now see the seniors, and they're very open.
This is my concern, and I know that many years ago we had an issue in the district. When you get a group of students together that start talking in a group, they may say something that might trigger something in someone else, or something confidential could come out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I recall that being an issue at some point, that there was some sort of Socratic meeting related to mental health, so I would have to think of the parameters, but giving them an outlet, aside from just going to find a teacher, to talk about their concerns is not a bad idea.
I mean, it's good and bad because they're able to talk
Right.
to each other, you know,
Right.
not that they're mental health experts,
Right.
but, you know, where before it was kind of hidden, I feel like this group, at least, feels like it's kind of a normal issue that
I think
many are struggling with.
I think I've spoken to you about this. I get the flagged email alerts. I don't know if I told you that or not. So every day, I get dozens of flagged email alerts. It's a security system that we have, and any trigger word. Someone could be writing a paper about the war, and they could mention some sort of violence. It'll come up, and I have to read them all. But I also, if it's someone else talking about wanting to hurt themselves, a bullying issue, a fight, profanity, an issue at home. So, it's a little intrusive. They're usually surprised when I send it to the administrator or the counselor, and they call them down to the office to have a conversation to check on them, because they don't realize Big Brother's always watching. But it's been tremendously beneficial. We've really headed off some serious issues. So, to your point, it's out there. They're talking about it to their friends.
And to add, counselors our guidance counselors, and SAC also, hold group meetings. And our SBSSs, they do have groups of students come in and talk
Right.
frequently. It's not always a one-on-one or a two-on-two.
Our counselors are tremendously busy. It's really amazing how often the students are in and out of their offices.
And they know their students.
They do. Yes.
I have a question about that with the SVSS.
Sure.
I know at least the one at Leonardo, I just absolutely love her. And I think she's personally, she's been so good for me and for my son. Is there a way to, because I know a lot of times she has a lot of paperwork to do where maybe, and then I know that that's just her job. Is there a way to assist her? I mean, she is so busy. I mean, where there's I'll talk to her and she'll apologize, or she'll call me after hours and say, oh, I didn't get back to you. And I'm like, oh, I know how busy you are. And she makes it so comfortable, I think, for the kids to go. And it could be a little of I'm going to go to Miss Mary's because I can get out of, whatever.
They're also,
hard, but-
they facilitate IRNS, and they do a lot of the IRNS paperwork, which is really very time consuming for them.
So I feel so bad because she gets tied down with a lot of paperwork, and then there's also the groups of kids that come in to her just to talk, or to talk about, they need to take a deep breath, or they need to, and for me, I feel so grateful to have her in the building, and I wonder if every school is as lucky as we are to have somebody like her.
We have fantastic counselors, whether it's guidance counselor, our SACs, or SBSSs, our child study team employees are fantastic. They're all extremely busy. If you go into any of their offices across the district, they're never just sitting there. They are always doing something. We do look at different ways to sort of delegate responsibilities, but there's only, especially a small school like Leonardo, where Mr. Smith is the principal behind us. I know that Mrs. Vega would probably be willing to help if there was ever an issue that out of the ordinary that Mrs. Matarese encountered, but right now, all I can say, she's kind of got a balance and all. I wish I had an answer.
I feel so bad
Right.
because the kids love her, so
Yeah.
I think that probably she gets a lot more visitors than
The
she
buildings
can
are
deal
all so busy. If you go to our high schools, our SACs are running around all day long. Mr. Smith?
And she's constantly doing all the proactive stuff.
She does Choose to Be Nice.
She does Choose to Be Nice once a month. She also has, lunch groups she rotates lunches through. So not only is she doing stuff that's, required, some things like paperwork and IRS, which is very important, but she's also goes above and beyond and does all the things that are proactively supporting, social emotional learning and to your point,
And they add these resources to the parents, and they try to be as responsive as possible, but there's parents all over the district that are reaching out to counselors every day for support and advice. So I meet with the SBSSs once a month, and we collaborate, and we talk about some of the issues that you just mentioned, because they feel it. So we're trying to brainstorm the best we can. Yeah, back.
But
navigate that. And then once they're done with their freshman year, from my understanding, they change guidance counselors.
Yes.
So there's, even if they have a connection with that freshman guidance counselor, it's now lost as they progress. So
Right.
how do they, the quiet kid, or maybe the kid doesn't even realize they're having issues?
Now, it's
Now
my
all
understanding, and those of you who have high school students, you may disagree, but the counselors do their best to meet with the students as regularly as possible. I know at the beginning of the year, they try to meet with them all. They really realistically can't do that frequently throughout the year. Then they really start to try to look at those who need a little extra attention, those who may be struggling in academic or emotional areas, and meet with them. And then they do try to meet with them all again toward the end. But
Is that sometimes based on like if a teacher has a concern?
sure, it can be. It can be a parent phone call. It could be an administrative concern. But they try to touch base with them, at least in the beginning and the end. That was my understanding and how I saw it when I was at South. At Thompson, they did the same thing. They had a thing where they went and every year they did a interest survey where they would go in and meet with the kids individually, where they fill it out and have conversations. They tried to follow back up with them throughout the year, but I can't say for certain that they meet regularly with every student. But they try to get to know every student. It's hard when there's so many.
Is there a reason that after freshman year, they switch counselors?
That was just something that's always been in place, and we've had freshman counselors because of the fact that it was a transitional year, and those particular counselors worked on the transition from middle school into high school, and then after that, they were kind of specialized in transitioning those freshmen, so then after they went out of their freshman year, they got a different guidance counselor.
Now, is it the same from sophomore year through
I'm
senior
trying to
year?
think, they loop with them the entire, after sophomore year.
So if you would feel like, freshman's a huge transition. But then, as they start to navigate high school and you're thinking out college and all that,
Right.
have one person.
They loop after the freshman
You'll
year.
have the same one from sophomore through the senior year.
And moving forward now, we'll be having a freshman counselor full-time, two in each building.
Yeah.
Which would be good. We used to have a
We added
traveling
a
counselor.
counselor at the high school level. So there used to be one that traveled, so now we both have a whole extra.
There was two freshmen and then a traveling one, now there's two freshmen. But they loop, but they do lose them after freshman year. And then obviously our junior and senior counselors really specialize in writing recommendations in the college search process. So that becomes very, very busy, from junior year through the middle of senior year when they're starting to commit to schools. Pete?
So, Ms. Batteries, I just thought of this, is getting help next year. Proud to say that I was here presenting with my dog a while back, Ace. So Ace, yesterday, along with Roxy from Middletown North, we passed our final test. It's been a long year of training. So we are officially air dogs, the two of us, and the other three are going to test in the subsequent weeks to come. So those are certainly going to be, and next year with the gracious support of our superintendent, there's going to be 10 more dogs going through cohort 2. So every school at the end of next year, every school will have one dog in it, and maybe a couple may have two. So those, in my last role as assistant principal at the middle school, you're pretty much a disciplinarian, but you also, I would never consider myself a counselor, but sometimes you have to talk to kids in ways that you're trying to teach them lessons that maybe a counselor would. I used to call it gas station therapy, but anyway. And I would say that was a joke to me and my counselor. She's like, "You're not a counselor." I'm like, "I know I'm not, but some of the stuff I said kind of sound like something you would say." But anyway, so ACE, the dog will serve for students in immediate social emotional meltdown and needs and things of that nature on a daily basis. Well, 3 days a week that the dog will be in buildings. So again, not that I'm a counselor, but I view it as taking some.
You'll be getting a lot of this.
I'm taking some work with Ms. Banneries with that regard to those students that are in immediate need of some TLC.
We're excited to have that program in Middletown, expanding it. Rachel, I think you had a question.
Yes, I did. It's more at the middle and high school levels. Is there a target ratio that you're shooting for between students per counselor, is my first question. And is it consistent between the schools? And then, this is kind of, I don't know if you have data to track this, but I'm thinking my own daughters, I have freshmen at South. I'm wondering how much time a guidance counselor is spending on the kind of proactive post-secondary stuff, like choosing courses, college prep or whatever, SAT stuff, guiding them, versus the immediate social emotional, like crises mode type things. And is it, I'm assuming it's the same person, so the same person who's helping you pick your classes, if you're taking AP, whatever, is also helping you assess if you're suicidal?
Now, that could be the student assistance coordinator helping
Okay.
with that.
So that's
So
different.
a couple different things. No, we don't have a target number.
Okay.
There's about 150, I think 150 more students in South right now, maybe a little less than that. At North, they have the same amount of counselors.
Okay.
We're at like 1,500 students in South and maybe 14
Okay.
and change. So, and then you can think about, you've got 5 counselors in each building, 5 guidance counselors in each building, so you can do the math.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it differs from grade to grade number.
We have 6 now, right? With the additional?
Yeah, with the additional we have 6, right? We've got 2 freshmen, right? Right, yes.
How many do you have in the building? You have 5.5 now, right?
Yes, 6.
Okay.
The addition will be the 6th.
And the second?
And the second. But to your point, we don't have a target that we're shooting for right now. We do look at it pretty closely all the time. That addition of the additional guidance counselor is going to help. For your tracking information, we did pilot a counseling tracking form this year that was developed. That information is confidential, but we are going to be tweaking that form a little bit from the feedback that we got from counselors. And we're going to talk about it at our counseling meeting next week, just so we can have a little bit more effective information and what they can count as academic, what they really count as social, emotional when the kids are checking in that. But we have worked as a district on tracking that a little bit more effectively.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to look at guidance counselors. I don't see us adding another one right now. I mean, someone else could have different ideas, but I think this is kind of where we're at. We were happy to add that second freshman counselor. But that's where we are.
Okay. And I know that I reached out to my daughter's guidance counselor about specific things about classes, they asked a question, and I try not to. I'm trying to let my kids self-advocate. As we get toward the college or post-secondary planning stuff, I'm starting to get terrified as to like just how much is out there.
Yes.
I know. And like what my role is, what the guidance counselor's role is, what my kid's role is, you know, and how we all work together. Is there a forum, a plan for like parents to get more involved with guidance as your kid gets closer to junior year and start thinking about where to go to school or what to do after school and what's appropriate? Because I don't want to be that annoying parent.
I think it depends on the student, but we do have we have a financial aid night and we also have a junior parent college night at the high school. I would
And I think
encourage you to
that's too
attend.
late.
What's that?
I think that's too late.
Can you shoot me an email on that? I'll forget otherwise.
A lot of people feel that's too late by the time.
I can have a conversation with the counselors about that. There might be a reason why, so I'm going to let them. They've been doing it for a long time. But I would attend those 2 things. I think it depends on your student. My older daughter, I was very involved. She needed a little more support. My middle student, who's going away next year, I did very little. He worked with a guidance counselor. He did all of his own things. You know, he bounced things. I think it depends, and I think you can have that conversation with your counselor for a little bit of guidance with regard to how much involvement you think that you need.
Yeah, and I think part of my first question is understanding, obviously, that that's important and it's coming. It's not the front burner right now. Our kids are struggling, and I get that. And the guidance counselors, I imagine, are prioritizing. I have to make sure that you guys are okay where you are. I'm not thinking necessarily about 2 years down the road. And I understand that too. I understand that prioritization. I just want to make sure that collectively, parents and the district are figuring out where we connect so that the kids don't fall through. So we don't like, oh crap, it's junior year, I didn't even think about your college stuff and we haven't visited schools, we haven't done anything because I've been so focused on making sure you're okay to go to school every day and you're not.
I don't think there's a right or wrong. So, like I said, I'm speaking from personal experience. I went with my daughter and looked at schools like junior year a lot. My son didn't want to go until he started getting in, you know, and then we started looking at the schools. So I think you have to have a personal conversation with your child. You have to talk to your guidance counselor. There is outside college counseling if you ever need that. That is available at a cost.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, working with your school guidance counselor to provide you with a little support will give you an idea of what you need to do. But when you're on a trip, I always say when you're on a vacation, go look at a school.
Yeah.
You know, there's schools in every town.
Yeah, I did. We were in New Orleans. I said we're going to drive through LSU, a huge school, and then we're going to drive through Tulane, which is more of a middle size. See what you know, just so that, I mean, when they were younger, so they could get a feel.
You probably found that Alex was a lot different than Maddie was trying to, you know, like getting my son to do anything.
In every way.
You know, the boys are tough to get going sometimes, but you have to push.
Oh no, he was done.
Yeah.
He was quick.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Nothing Else?
I've heard of it, but I've never.
That's
plan that Middletown uses, and it's staying the same?
Naviance?
Because CBA is switching it for next year, that's the only reason I was.
Next year we'll still have Naviance. There hasn't been any discussion of switching yet.
I've never gone on.
That's a
Naviance is great.
Never gone on.
Is that something that as a parent I have a login to automatically? Is my kid logged in?
You'll get one you'll get it as a parent.
Yes.
Okay, and what point in your kid's high school career do you get? So I already have it and I missed an email somewhere.
Actually, in ninth
Okay.
grade, they do that.
All right.
Send an email to the counselor, say you want your Naviance login information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Is there a way that, as far as the social emotional and the mental health awareness, that you're trying to push it down to almost a student level? I'm thinking, my daughter's in middle school, and kids who necessarily won't go and talk to somebody or sit alone in the cafeteria. I talked about this at a prior meeting, and someone had suggested to my daughter who's in the Honor Society, because I feel like they have a lot of academic involvement in the school, but I feel like there might be a way to use a certain body of students
Peer leaders.
as peer leaders for, don't just come to, like, you need help with math. No. Do you not have somewhere to sit at lunch? Do you not know where your place is? Do you not have your people?
At the middle school, we have peer leader, middle school peer leaders that do address issues specific to behavior and dealing with conflict and your emotions. A lot of times the students are pushed, all the time the students are pushed in with the guidance of the SAC, and they deliver those lessons to the students. Our peer leaders do a lot of push-in related to drug and alcohol use, but they do push in and talk about bullying and other environmental issues as well. But it's something we could expand on for sure.
I know that she emailed her guidance counselor the night that she got inducted into the Honor Society, because we had talked about this. So she's trying to come up with a way to make like a lunch bunch or
It's a great idea.
or something that's not branded as like, I don't know where to sit, but if you're uncomfortable, like come sit together, and maybe that's how you find your people.
Yeah, I think the peer leaders address that at times. I think when we explore social emotional learning curriculum, perhaps there's a piece where we can infuse student involvement.
Yeah.
And
How do peer leaders get identified? Is that?
there's an application process. Yeah.
I think that is a good conversation to have, because having one of those children that doesn't necessarily have somebody to sit with all the time, when I mentioned, well, can we talk to, friends, because they might just not notice, they're all flitting around all over the place. I've been told they can't make kids give up their lunch to sit with people. So I've been the one to contact the parents and say, if they can they just stop by, or, and they always want to. It's just whether they notice in their middle school brain, but I just had a parent that had the high honor roll breakfast, and I just had a parent text me and said, what do I do? There's a kid sitting all by themselves. I said, you go to one of the counselors and say, this is not acceptable.
That's why I think if you have a group of kids, a peer group of kids, I'm looking at like the Honor Society group, because those are the kids, that's my daughter, and she's willing to go sit in the cafeteria and tutor somebody if they don't show up. She's also willing to sit there and talk to somebody who might feel that she's approachable. So I definitely think you have a group of students who are willing to give of that. For others who, like, we're talking to them about it, right? So
School ambassadors in that
Yeah, I was
sense.
just thinking of that word.
Yeah, ambassadors to.
Yeah, and like we were identifying students where somehow it's publicized that these are your go-tos for situations where
you have to be clever about your branding though.
Right.
Yeah, no, you don't want, they're not gonna wear a sash.
It's not like, right.
It's not like safety patrol.
Right, you would hope that they like identify these kids on their own, but kids don't talk to each other sometimes, and, my own daughter doesn't know, like, I'm like, did you know that one of your good friends sometimes can't go to school because she doesn't know how that day is gonna go? And she's like, no, I didn't know that. So they just sometimes don't know because they don't
I can put it on my agenda for the counseling meeting next week.
It's kind of like the theory of the buddy bench.
I was just gonna say the buddy bench, yeah.
Same way,
It's around the
like
same.
the buddy bench at the elementary level, where if you don't have someone to play with at recess, you sit on the buddy bench, or you go to the buddy bench, and that's like the gathering spot for kids that don't necessarily have a social tie during that recess period or that lunch period.
Yeah.
It kind of takes that aloneness out of the situation in a really sensitive way.
Rachel?
I was just gonna say, I think to your point, branding is very important. I think at an elementary level, kids are much more open and honest and willing to be like, I don't have a friend right now, I'm gonna sit on the buddy bench. Middle school and high school, I think it gets very, I don't wanna be the person who goes over and says I need a friend. But if you create a club at lunch that's like the bingo club, I don't know, some sort of other thing. Hey, if you don't wanna sit at your own lunch table, you can come over and play bingo with us for the 20 minutes. I bet you'll get a lot of kids if there's almost like a veiled way that they can identify, but it doesn't, they're not hand raising as I need a friend right now. You know, I think that could be really cool. And I know at Thompson, oh, I can't remember what it was called, but they had like a game type thing sometimes at lunch where my kids would go and then a bunch of
Mrs.
kids.
Felder used to run that.
Yes, exactly. From all different groups of the school would come and they would play board games, friendship club, yeah. And it was awesome. My kids absolutely loved it. And I know they got to meet new kids that way. And everybody, their purpose wasn't, let me be a friend to this person. Their purpose was, let's go play games with other people, you know?
We got away from some of that over the last few years. I think we need to.
Yeah, I think we're there, yeah.
And I think, I mean, having, not my son, but having, I mean, the lunch and what table you sit at is a huge issue. I mean, my daughter's now gonna go to high school, and the number one concern I have for an IEP meeting is lunch. What is she gonna, because she can't go up and say, can I sit with you? So, so.
And you
how
dread
does
the
that
thought
go?
of your child being the child walking around the hallway in high school, right, not having anybody to eat.
Exactly.
So it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
All right, I've taken enough time.
I just want to make one correction. We're
Shiva,
going to have 7 counselors in each high school next year, not 6.
It's seven.
There's 6 right now, and then we're adding 6.5 now, we're adding.
Thank you. Yeah, of course.
I just had a question kind of from like the opposite perspective. Incoming kindergartners.
Yes.
These children like were running into preschool when the world shut down.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a very unique age group because a lot of these kids only went to preschool for like 6 months or a year versus like in the past we had preschoolers coming in as kindergartners that were there for like 3 years, right? Or even 5 years if they were in a daycare situation. So I was just kind of wondering, would we ever go back to like the prior to 2020 orientation setup? Like there's been enough by now, like in the past, they had the bus ride, they had the entry meeting, they had, and that's only certain schools that do that to begin. Oh, really? I just didn't know if there was any sort of like intro that could be done, or if there's gonna be like special support groups set up for the incoming kindergartners for socialization and kind of like, it just seems like a very like murky.
The goal is to get back to post-COVID traditional. The goal is to get back to post-COVID traditional programming.
But I didn't even know if it was like a pre-COVID thing or if it's just like this group of kids is so specific in their like development that I don't know if we could maybe put something in there for kindergarten.
Who oversees kindergarten orientation?
That would be Angela. She works with the principals. I don't know if Mr. Smith has anything to add to that.
But I mean, even during the school year next year, like some sort of like buddy building.
You want to send me an email?
Yeah, sure.
Related to that?
Yeah.
And this way I can take it to the server.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Can I just say something? For the last couple of years, I don't think we've been doing it, but like they're starting, Mr. Smith just had a kindergarten orientation. So, and they'll be, it'll be happening.
Yeah, so, I mean, prior to the shutdown, when I arrived at Leonardo 6 years ago, it was something they had done, and it was kind of in conjunction with the PTA. There was a PTA representative and the principal of the school. And there was 5 different Fridays they would come in May and June and we had a different, agenda each time per se. And obviously the last 2 years we didn't do that. This year we did one, a little abbreviated, but we had the students come in last Friday, last Thursday or Friday, I forget. And again, it was read a story, did a craft, we took them to the classrooms, did the classroom, the teachers came in. So it was kind of like all the 5 that we all did wrapped in one per se. So we kind of all, I don't think there were ever, like I said, I've been there 6 years. I don't know if there was ever someone like in charge saying, making sure you're doing kindergarten orientation. I think everyone just, and they always had the one prior to school starting in the first, September 1st, September 2nd, when the teachers came back. There was always that one that was standard. And I think the other ones were kind of,
I think it was a PTA. Really.
I was gonna say,
yeah, so I work with Mrs. Ness to run it.
Right, she
That's
always
what
did it,
her and
yeah.
we structure it and pick the dates and things of that nature.
I think it's important also to know that we are constantly having conversations with our teachers, particularly our primary grade teachers, because when we look at impact from the pandemic, we do really, all of our kids have been impacted in different ways, but our younger students, particularly in the sense of limited school experience. So they have, some of them, as you said, are coming to kindergarten for the first time, and that is probably their first formal traditional school experience. So our teachers are aware and will be continued to be supported in the sense that there's going to be a longer acclimation period of getting kids to develop that school readiness that we have had previous to the pandemic, where many of our students have done some kind of pre-kindergarten or some, other learning outside of the kindergarten classroom to prepare them in all of those readiness skills. And our kindergarten over time has become very academic. The rigor of kindergarten has been raised significantly over the last 5 to 10 years. But we have to also go back to the fact that we're going to be intaking a lot of kids that don't have those readiness skills. So we're going to have to find ways to maintain the rigor in kindergarten, but also weave in those readiness components, which readiness also has a lot to do with the social emotional ability to be able to attend, to focus, to cope with separation from mom or dad or whoever's at home with them. So there's a lot of pieces, but we certainly are mindful of that in that we have to approach that differently than we may have done in the past.
I think for the parents too, that if it's your first time kid, like you maybe weren't involved as much in preschool because you couldn't be, and you have no idea what public kindergarten, you have no idea what school's
That
like.
first separation is matter for everyone. Right? It is. We all probably remember when we have older kids, the time when we first put our child in school or on the bus and left them. Some kids wave by and that's the end of it. Other kids, it breaks our heart. But we know in the end they'll be okay. So I agree with you. I think we have to approach things differently because we're in a different place and time. But that doesn't mean that we diminish the rigor or diminish, the expectation. We just have to look at things differently.
Okay, Carol, thank you very, very much. Before too much longer, let's move on to Middletown Friends of Different Learners. Vera?
I'll give you the update. I'll make it very quick. So we had our dyslexia presentation. It went very well. They showed the film, the big picture, rethinking dyslexia. It was great. We had about 30 to 40 people come out to the presentation. There was probably 5 students there. Wish there were more because I think they would have loved the film. But there was great conversation. There was also a student, former Middletown student, who's now going to Quinnipiac, who was also on the panel talking about her experience. It was very nice. So just an update on the inclusion grant through the NJCIE, New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education. Harmony had a pilot pre-K that we've been discussing. They finished their first year and overall they were saying it went very well. They're adding a second pilot program for Harmony pre-K in the fall. They're going to be doing a parent survey for the parents who are in that integrated program, the gen ed students, parents, as well as the self-contained student parents are going to be given a survey, and they're going to use that feedback to guide the second program.
And it's a full day.
Yes,
full day
program. There's going to be professional development for a creative curriculum, it's called, so that when there is more inclusion in the classrooms, it's a curriculum that helps teach for mixed abilities in the class. Also, Fairview got a technical assistance grant through NJCIE, and that's going to include 5 professional development days in May and June of this year. And New Monmouth also got a co-teaching grant. They're doing about 7 co-teachers across grade levels at New Monmouth and content areas at New Monmouth. And lesson observation and providing feedback and help to the co-teachers just for improvement and also encouragement for what's going well. So MTF-ODL is, we're hoping for some suggestions for future presentations that we'll be giving next year. In one of our administration meetings, Dr. Tiedemann suggested a presentation on executive functioning, which I could certainly see a need from my parent friends and my own experience, and also behavior challenges, children presenting with behavioral challenges. If anybody has any suggestions, you can say it now, or feel free to email mtfodl@gmail.com. We appreciate it. That's all I have. Yeah, the only thing I would add is the first Harmony pilot. A majority of the children that were included are now looking at being included in kindergarten. So that's wonderful to see that it's moving on. Also on the inclusion side, they are looking at I don't know if the RFP is done at this point, but an inclusion specialist to start working with the co-teachers in the district in the fall. I think we have 140 co-teachers roundabout. So they'd be working with the co-teachers across the district. And the other inclusion, because it's not all or none, right? It's how do we, increase inclusion. You don't all have to go into gen ed, there can be other ways, but one of the things they're also looking at, working on is that in elementary school, there's no co-teaching support for science and social studies. But suddenly they go to middle school, and because they're in resource room for reading and math, they get thrown into, self-contained for science and social studies. So they're looking at seeing how in middle school, particularly on the social studies side, that the work can be modified or whatever so that the kids can be included versus going into a self-contained setting for that. So there's a lot of good stuff going on right now.
Okay.
One quick thing, I know Mr. Kirkpatrick, curriculum is now with you and Mrs. Alphone. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for some of the MTF-ODL content that gets shared in the meetings to maybe be somehow worked into some of the curriculum stuff for the kids. Like I know Erica commented, it'd be great to have more students there to see this content and absorb it. And as we as a district embrace inclusion more and are talking about just treating people kindly, being good humans, etc., maybe there's an opportunity to weave it into health or something. I don't know, just something to think about.
I think if we could do anything, because I think MTF-ODL is so supportive of the initiatives that the district is taking on now. What we find is that we'd like to help, particularly with the parents of younger children in the preschool or kindergarten level. And unfortunately, getting to know who MTF-ODL is, generally that doesn't happen unless they're really struggling. And then they're desperate and they're looking around for support or somebody to get advice from. So we were trying to figure out how to get more parents of younger kids to be involved so that we can encourage or, support based on our experiences. And that's a struggle. I don't know, our information's in the virtual backpack, but I've had a kid in this district for 15, I've never gone in the virtual backpack.
And the content of inclusivity is actually woven through a lot of our content, particularly health, because a piece of the health standards and curriculum is character education, and part of that is that inclusivity piece. Inclusivity of, people that might look different from you, learn differently from you, have differing levels of abilities, interests. So that theme is very present in health, but it's also a theme that we really try to promote throughout all of our content. And certainly we speak that message of everybody is different, everybody has strengths, everybody, has something to offer, and the acceptance of that. The language has shifted from tolerance to acceptance and inclusivity. But that is woven everywhere, but very predominant in the health area.
And that's why these grants that they have now that are focused on the pre-K and elementary are just it's so important, because once, it's very hard for a parent that has a child that's been self-contained up till middle or high school to suddenly say, oh, let's include. I mean, it's a scary thing. You go from a smaller protected environment into the general population or whatever. So the fact that these grants are happening at the base level, you know, hopefully gets the momentum going.
All right, so I just want to wrap it up. I want to say thank you very much for your hard work and dedication this year. I really, really appreciate everybody who's managed to try to come at least to a couple of meetings. We're not sure what the rhythm is going to be for next year. We don't know if it's going to be a pack-pick combination or how so obviously we'll be in touch over the summer. My last bit of business is if you know you're going to be the pick rep or you know who your new pick reps are going to be, please get in touch so that I can be sure to try to make an attempt anyway to get everybody a nameplate before the upcoming year. And I did want to say thank you very much to Larry. Larry, this is our last meeting. He's been on board with us for a number of years now, and I want to say thank you so much for everything, and good luck to your daughter in the future, and we will miss you. We will certainly miss you.